Good afternoon. It's another episode of the Gary and Mark Show. I'm Gary.
And I'm Mark.
And we're coming to you, well, we're not live.
No, but we are alive.
We're alive and we're glad we are.
And we are coming to you from...
Big Green Eddie's Big Green River.
Gary is the best of this. Okay, so we're going to look over there and read.
Green River Eddie's.
Yeah, the cue sheet we had last time we didn't have today, but it's Green River Eddie's Tap Room Grill at Salute Outfitters. And we are happy because they are a real sponsor. So
a real sponsor.
We might mess up their name, but we don't mess up their place.
No, we don't.
We do not.
We haven't yet.
And so we're brought to you today by... Again, Green River Eddie's Tap Room.
Green River Eddie's Tap Room.
And as always, we still have Rabbit Island Resort.
Rabbit Island Resorts. And then we have the Big Whiz Pocket Buddy.
Big Whiz Pocket Buddy.
Old man's best friend.
It is. And, and apparently there are people downloading those like crazy. Well, we are fortunate today because we don't often have guests.
No.
No, we've only had a couple. We actually had one guest, Howard, but he's now on staff.
Yeah.
But today we have a real special guest.
We do.
Celebrating a special 20th anniversary today, but not the kind you might think. So we're going to introduce you to a good friend of mine, and also he knows our Gary over here, but good friend of mine from Saluda, where we are, Chuck Hearon. All right.
Hey there, boys. It's nice to be here today. I thought you made this stuff up all the time.
That's right. See, Chuck has heard our podcast, but he has not actually seen us live do one.
No, he's heard them, and he's willing to come on the show right there.
He is. And so we wanted Chuck to come. He lives just, how far from here?
Oh, about a 7-iron, I'd say.
7-iron.
Yeah.
Well, we were actually talking about golf with Angela, who is the marketing person here, saying that we did not play a lot of golf. No. But so that means a lot more to you than it would to me. But
well, I don't play golf either.
Okay, but it sounds good.
I could hit one about that far, though.
All right, so that's good. But you can walk over here. You could, if it weren't for there is a sidewalk.
When I come downtown drinking, I usually walk back.
Okay, that's a smart move.
And so we are at Salute Outfitters, is this home. There's some good tap room over there. But so Chuck, why we wanted him to come today because it's coming up on the 20th anniversary of his doing something pretty amazing for anybody.
A through hike of the Appalachian Trail.
And so for those that don't know what a through hike is,
well, we can let Chuck explain that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thru-hike was described as an arrangement of rocks, sticks, steep hills, etc., so as to prevent or dissuade forward progress. But it was over 2,000 miles of that, and it was quite a challenge physically and mentally.
2,000 miles. And I tell you, I am not a big hiker. Gary is over there. I like the day hike. I have done some backpacking, and I'm going to tell you, I've done some backpacking on the Appalachian Trail. I don't know of any easy part for the whole 2,000 miles except maybe walking in Hot Springs, North Carolina, which is downtown, and a couple other trail towns maybe.
Right.
But it is all up and down. It is not on the ridge line where you have views forever and ever, ever.
And so you started April 15, 1999, and when did you finish?
Wrong in the middle of October, 15th or so. I did a flip-flop, which was unusual in those years. I went from Georgia up to Harper's Ferry and then took bus and train to Maine and then came back to Harper's Ferry. And it was lovely walking back in the fall of the year.
That probably makes a lot of sense because a lot of people I know trying to make it to the end in October, November, there's already snow and ice and stuff, and it's miserable. And I've seen pictures of the part up in Maine and that part of the country. It gets treacherous. I mean, you're climbing over boulders, rocks, going up like ladders to get to the...
Right. Yeah, after the 15th of October in Maine, you pay for your own rescue, and it runs around $200,000 a day.
Oh.
So that dissuaded me quite rapidly.
Now, are you making that up?
No.
Oh, my gosh. And
the amount of money could be an exaggeration, but you just really wouldn't want to be doing that.
And we want to mention, I'm sure people can hear, we are recording today outdoors.
Yeah.
We don't usually do that, but we wanted to get used to that because we are a mobile podcasting studio.
Right. That's Highway 176 you hear in the distance.
That's right.
It's not an airplane.
And in fact, we could have, if we had this equipment back then, we have a smaller recorder, Chuck, we could have followed you around and heard grunting probably and all kinds of stuff. So how did you decide to do this? This is not something you just wake up and do. You didn't read Bill Bryson's book. What's that book called? What's that book?
Walk in the Woods.
Walk in the Woods. You didn't read that first, did you? Or?
As a matter of fact, I read Bryson's book before the hike, and then I read it after the hike. And I visited some of the places that he wrote about with great detail, and some of those characters were still there. They were truthful depictions, I'll say that. I think in those days, quite a few people had a National Geographic coffee table book sitting around. And on a winter's evening, you can kind of roll your eyes over toward that book and open up a few pages. And they're talking about walking in the Green Tunnel. And it sounded like a challenge to me. And I did have a local friend who sort of mentored me in taking this up. And he encouraged me. And then a couple of my other drinking buddies thought it'd be a good idea if I did that as well. So that's how I kind of fell into it.
So we don't want to know how old you are now, but how old were you 20 years ago?
Well, I was about 50. I was 57 and 58 with my birthday in the middle of it. So I was a lot lighter in weight and more in a better physical condition than I am now.
Although that's hard to imagine. Of course, 20 years changes everybody, but Chuck is the volunteer trail boss. You still doing that?
Right. We call it a boss, but...
Yeah, he doesn't boss anybody. He says he don't want me to call him that because people would think he had a crew, but it's a 98% of it's all Chuck, but at a local nature center down in Tryon called Fence.
Right.
And you've been doing that how many years?
Well, off and on, about 25, I would say.
So that I'm just telling you this because he talked about not being in the same kind of shape you've got to be to do what he does out there. Yeah. It is tough work and much appreciated. So, I mean, how many people a year, do we have any clue, start hiking on the AT with folks?
I can tell you this year, I'd mentioned Chuck earlier, I was hiking in the Smokies in May, didn't see anyone. In the last day of our hike, we crossed the AT at, what's the name of this gap? Getting over to 20 Mile. Anyway, the 30 minutes we are at this gap. We hardly seen anybody or a 4-day walk. The 30 minutes we're at this gap, 15 people come through. And the lady we talked to was 2,200 and something. And she said they were projecting 4,000 people this year.
Right.
To wait a minute, 4,000 to finish?
No, to start.
When I started, went to Dahlonega, as we said, on April the 15th, there were about 3,500 people that were going to attempt a through hike. And in those days, almost everybody started at that point, and it caused a lot of crowding problems. When I finished my hike, I think 350 people of the intended through hikers, and somebody said, that's about right, usually about 10%.
Yeah, I'm amazed even that many can get through because I'm telling you, if you have not done that, it is not easy. And you're carrying a pack weighing about how much back in those days?
Well, I hate to say, when I started, I had 57 pounds.
Sounds like Bill Bryson. But and Bill Bryson had whittled that down within the first 5 miles. Did you whittle yours down in the first few miles? Or?
Right, I got rid of the Weber grill, plate of bed.
Yeah, right. So now that mountain crossings, which is 50 miles in, or the first where the Wallacea Center,
right?
I know they're kind of famous for helping people at that point who still want. Well, two things. That's
true. They send
stuff back for those who are also quitting, but
I think they just keep it. I went in there. I had a point and shoot camera, but I also had a nice Leica rangefinder. Well, it's a fairly heavy camera, so I left that there. And I think they put it on eBay.
Oh, right.
I'm not sure eBay existed then.
I'm saying they did not have cell phones then, did they? Or
I had a flip phone, which I used on occasion because my parents were both in ill health in the elder years, and I let a few people call their mommy. On my phone. Yeah. You have to take it up top of the ridge if you want to call your mama. So
that's cool. You had
the technology was quite different. You had to be camping near the cell tower to get through.
So imagine in 2,100 miles or so, how many times do you think about quitting? Any?
The only thing that worried me was the condition of my feet. I've had blisters before, but I never had blisters under blisters, under blisters, and they can go in quite deep. You can feel your pulse in your heels, especially.
Did you have to take off a few days, let them heal?
No, I never did that. I just took awful lot of ibuprofen.
Wow.
I would sit down on a log to take a break and then get started again. You got to take a couple more ibuprofen.
Did you wear out more than one pair of boots?
I used 3 different pair, but one pair of Vast Clarion was my favorite. When I got to Maine, the boulders there are huge, and a lot of them are submerged in the earth, and the tops of them sweat from condensation. If you lost any grip on your tread, and you take a stride, it's like stepping on a banana. So I bought a new pair. Fortunately, you can just wear those right out of the box.
Yeah.
Gary over here used to work with a Diamond Brand Outdoors. So
it was kind of a beefed up sneaker in a way.
Right.
Yeah, not heavy leather, but 99. So it's been 20 years. Do you wake up now and go, on this day 20 years ago, here's where I was?
Yeah, we can look at my little Appalachian Trail data
he's
book.
got that 1999 still here.
Some of those dates are projected because I wanted to have some idea of what I was shooting at. But instead of getting in better shape, I kind of got in worse shape, so I fell a little behind on my schedule. I did want to mention something about Gary here and about Diamond Brand and 20 years ago. The marketing situation was more an assistantship back then, and outfitters are known for experiencing what you're getting ready to experience. They're not just marketeers. So it made a huge difference. He had sales staff who had hiked and carried weights and so forth, and they were a great help in advising me what equipment to get.
Is that where you got most of your gear from?
Yes. I'll bet, Johnny Sunstein, I was trying to think, he was working there back then, and I'm not sure what year he'd done the trail, but earlier in the 90s, we had a couple of guys and girls who had thru-hiked. And me, I haven't been out for longer than a couple of weeks in years, so I wonder about going out an extended trip like that. Like, did you take but you wouldn't take a day off ever?
You'd have what's called a zero day, where you're trying to stitch ends and missing things together. When I first started, I tried to have friends and family send me equipment along the trail, but invariably you would get to town on Thursday afternoon at 4 to discover that the post office is not open on Friday, and that Monday's a holiday.
Yeah.
So you kind of look through the bars there, and you can see your little package that says "Hole for Thru-Hiker, Chuck Hearon." And it has all kind of good stuff in it that you really need, and say, oh well, I'm going on through town here. So that was disappointing. I learned how to have what I call a bump box, and I did my own bump box. You go to the grocery store and buy what you want. Put about half of it in your pack and send that pack 125 miles ahead to a post office that you have the schedule of operating hours on. So that worked pretty well.
And these days with the internet, those hours be pretty accurate. But if you're using a trail directory or something, by the time that comes out, they may have changed their hours or days. So,
but in those days, the ATM machine in Hot Springs, I think they put $100 in it a week. So I got there, and there wasn't any cash to be had. So you had to be fairly industrious about economics.
So were you able to stay in the hostels or hotels or motels ever? Or?
I stayed in a hostel if it were known with trail chatter as being an interesting and a nice one, nice people and so forth. That was fun because they're quite famous, and trail talk is always about that. The shelters, I liked the shelters a lot better when I got to New England and I was heading back south, and there wasn't anybody in the shelters. If you've ever been in a shelter in the Smokies behind the chain link fence and hear 14 people snoring, not synchronized, not like Katie did. And then the squeaking chain link door opening and not closing back immediately and say, how about shutting that door? We don't want the bear in
I
here.
would say, what's the chain link door or gates for,
Right,
for the bear?
The shelters in the Smokies were pretty grim.
And I imagine you had mice in most of the shelters, too.
Oh, yeah, they start on number 14 and run over his chest, and on the 13, leap over to 12, right on through, and the tin cans in the ceiling swinging.
Yeah, we used to have a summer camp. That was an issue every single night. It was big stories to tell. So did you have a tent? Was that where you stayed the other nights?
Yeah. I used a tarp. I used the one-man tent, and it became a hotel, really. It's quite roomy. A couple of times I tried to use a bivy sack, and when you get in a bivy sack, it's kind of like being filler in a sausage. You could not even get your t-shirt off.
Yeah.
And then the water would hit the fabric, and it was like having a cat pee on right in your face through your tent.
Well, that's attractive. Yeah, that
is.
right there.
Not that attractive.
All those people out there that were wondering, are they going to do the AT now? That put them over.
Okay, so that was another question I have in just a minute. But before that is, would you, if you were like 50-something again, would you ever consider doing it again?
No, my feet hurt too much right now. Oh, you mean if I hadn't done it?
In other words, knowing what you've done, how hard it was, would it be something, would you tell other people you ought to do this?
I think it suits certain people. It's a selfish thing to do, and you're single tasking. Nowadays, people especially are not able to deal with that. It's hard to have a conversation as long as we've been talking here right now with anybody you know. They change the subject or go off, leave the room or get on their phone or whatever. So keeping company with yourself is quite a challenge. It is physical. Most of the people I ran into who really made it all the way were in some transitional stage. They lost a mate, or they were going from grad school to their doctoral post-grad to Lord knows what.
Have you ever kept up with any of those people in your
Not
hiking?
really, no.
What was your trail name?
I was Buzzard Wing.
How'd you come up with that?
It's kind of related back to some of the childhood stories I had read. I think somebody might have been in one of the Old Yeller or something like that. Had a friend whose name was Fodder Wing. But when you hike the trail in Georgia, especially, the buzzards hover on the escarpment on the updraft, and they got a reddish eye and a yellowy nose, and they just kind of roll that eye around and say, "How you feeling today?"
I can picture that. Yeah. So you have 2 grown sons.
Right.
So they're not the age you were when you were hiking yet by many years, but would you ever think they would want to do that? Or they have the temperament they could do that?
No, they live in a different paced world.
I think we all do. I think
they're entertained by different things. That single tasking to drive an average person insane. I used to think, how many languages can I say hello and goodbye in? And it went all back to my Latin, whiny, weedy, wiki, and amoa masa mat.
I don't know what they're talking about.
Oh, I had that.
I thought I was going crazy.
My high school did not teach Latin. Taught Spanish, but didn't even teach Spanish. Taught French when I was there, and
right.
I won't get into that. That could be a whole podcast. But go ahead.
I was going to say, so here we are, August, 26th?
I think so.
Yeah.
They go into the middle, and it works backwards.
Yeah,
because
you
Harper Ferry.
So is this same book published these days? This is the Trail Guy. I've seen different versions of it.
It seems like now the one everybody likes is that
Lightfoot,
or something Bigfoot, or he's got some kind of a name,
right?
And you got all the elevation in the
right. And it's electronic now. It's digital too. We used to get into town, and you wanted to use the landline to make a phone call. And then this is going to sound sexist, but there was frequently an attractive young girl, a blonde typically, at the head of the line of maybe 15 or 20 grubby-looking other people. And she was talking to her mother about everything she did today, and yesterday, the day before. And everybody else is kind of shifting weight from one foot to the other. Some of them still have their packs on, going like, I just want to tell Mom I'm alive and find out if she is also. So, but now everybody has a phone, and
oh yeah,
it's like a virtual thing instead of an actual.
Well, this summer I was up in New England, and we were on the AT just for a day hike. And so it's the first time I ever came across a box that had Trail Magic written on it.
Right.
Did they have that when you were hiking, where people would leave things for hikers, goodies?
The year I hiked, 99, was very dry. Quite a few people in urban areas had a garden hose run out to the fence behind their house, and about 16 milk jugs with water in them. I got to places where the water supply was coming down a drop at a time, and people were sitting around collecting. Okay, you got 15 drops. How about moving over? So I encountered a good bit of trail magic. From what I read now, they almost discourage it because people get dependent upon it, or you could get some bad trail magic. But there was yogiing then too. You could look at across the table somewhere across the yard and see somebody holding a big drumstick. You just start salivating. So it looked like a boxer dog, you know.
So when you say yogi, you mean like Yogi Bear or something?
Yeah.
Picnic. Okay, I wonder what you.
So I see here, Warren, New Hampshire, August 28th. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to flip the pages of that away.
Yeah.
So
South. Yeah.
So from you started in April until October is what, 6 months? October?
6.5.
6.5 months.
Right.
So if anybody came to you today in shape and said, Chuck, I know you've done this. What advice would you give me? What could you say?
Right. Well, even at that time, I did a huge amount of reading, and it was available. And as I told Gary before, the Railway had been published, and it was so bizarre that it really sounded more intriguing than you could imagine. But it helps if you're an active person playing singles tennis and not doubles, and if you're riding a bicycle for the cardio part. And you really have to learn how to breathe, how to synchronize like you do when you're riding a bicycle. There's a whole lot to learn. So I could determine by looking at the average person whether I thought they might be likely to make it. Although I would say I did see some people who were heavy at the start that were really trimmed up, and they were determined and they had made it. But you would kind of know if a person was having what I would call mental problems, not like a mental illness, but just a way of looking at things and how to process what comes down the line.
Wow. So I think we're going to wrap this episode up, Gary.
Well, tell you what, and you look at Chuck today, and it looks like he's still in pretty darn good shape.
He is. And he could hike around circles around me, I'm sure. And Gary over here's had a hip replacement, but he still backpacks.
Yeah, but in the trail maintenance that Chuck does, I'm very appreciative of that. I did a few tours of duty with Sweat Crew in the Smokies.
Right.
We on the AT. The one thing I'd say is, the shelters now on the AT and the Smokies are pretty sweet.
Wow.
They have put these big old shed roofs off the front. They took all the chain link off.
What?
Yeah.
What about the bears?
Well, every backcountry shelter and backcountry campsite has cables and pulleys to hang
your food now. And
they just tell you, if you want to, don't cook inside of here. These big old shed roofs off the front, around the side. I mean, I'm sure it's still they're overwhelmed by the spring push.
Right.
But they have done some upgrade from. Of course, I wonder what would it have been like to be one of those people going through in the 50s.
I think about that a whole lot too. Uh-huh. I know people who did the whole trail for $200. That was for some cornmeal, some flour, and maybe some oatmeal.
Was that Grandma Gatewood?
No, well,
Wasn't she the
she's
first
an amazing
one?
person, but the person who helped me here locally did that. And Earl Schaefer said he put sand in his boots, and I'm sure they were just leather boots to toughen his feet. Well, I don't think that really works.
No.
I think that grinds up your feet.
Well, times have changed.
Yes, they have.
But the trail's still there, and it's a national treasure for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Chuck, we have a new tradition here on the Gary and Mark Show.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned it to you, but we started, if you listen to all of our episodes, the Gary and Mark Podcasting University,
Right.
where you have to enroll, and if you enroll, most people will get a diploma.
Right.
It may take a while. For some people, it takes next day.
Yes.
Some it takes an hour.
Money wouldn't hurt.
But they have to actually apply. But for our guest, starting with Chuck Heron
It's
here,
like an honor. Yeah.
we have for you on Perchment. That's
there
right.
on-
Okay, so
at
we
that.
have. Hold it now.
Okay.
Sound. Our first honorary BS degree.
It's just beautiful, really.
It is beautiful, isn't it?
It's in two color.
Yeah.
It is.
Red and black.
Oh, if we only had video.
Well, we do.
Oh, if we only
and if
had
you fill
video.
this paper, that is our
That is
that's
some
the
nice
linen.
stock.
That's linen.
That's right. And we have it in a special frame.
Plasticine envelope.
There you go.
A nice
Plasticine.
sleeve.
So that's you have not only honorary BS with extra honors. So that's as high as we can get. Now eventually when we get our graduate division moving, we've got our MBS.
Well, I'm
BS.
overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed.
Thank you. Well, we
boys.
thought you would be, and no tears, okay? But we are so glad to have you on the show, and
Well, thank you very much.
you could be a regular. He could.
Yeah, you could.
So that's the end of another episode, huh, Gary?
I reckon it is.
I'm
All right.
Mark.
I'm Gary.
And don't forget to check us out at www.garyandmark.com. We'll see you in the next episode.